In the previous part, we looked into Microsoft and OpenAI partnership and how can you get access to these OpenAI models. In this part, we're going to explore how can you secure these Azure OpenAI models. And Daniel is going to help us understand what is responsible AI. Again, we will go broader or we'll expand this responsible AI topic in the future section. But here he highlights about what are these responsible AI principles and how it is being applied to Azure AI. And we will touch into does OpenAI models follow responsible AI principles as well? Let's go and learn about it. Enjoy.
But when we talked a little bit and we touched on this around security and these are the questions that in my time I've been asked countless times, and I think it's important to reiterate. Um, the any time, as we said, these models have no memory. You send a prompt, which is a string of text, and you get a string of text back. The model is not trained on that information. It is never used by Microsoft or provided to OpenAI for training. Uh, it is used for that interaction and then sent back. The data is not available to other customers. It is not available to OpenAI. It doesn't use to improve the models or any other third-party products. Those are all really, really important. Um, and finally, if you are fine tuning, I mentioned fine tuning before. If you do choose to fine tune or find a need to fine tune a model, it is that fine tune model is yours and yours alone. You manage it. You effectively, it is not ever used by or for anyone else, and the training data you use to fine tune it is not either. Those are really important. We need to reiterate and keep reiterating these fundamental pieces. Well, we talked about responsible AI, and this deserves its own complete discussion. Microsoft has adopted and or created our own responsible AI principles and framework, and these date back many years. I think back in I could be wrong, around 2014, I believe, was the first responsible AI framework or principles. These are public. This is a public framework, a public set of principles that both Microsoft use, but you can also take and use for your own business, your own organization. And we encourage any organization that are thinking about or considering how they use AI, they should have a set of principles and a framework that they can use to ensure they're doing things responsibly. We have 6 pillars in our framework, which is privacy and security, how we deal with the data that's being used by these AIs, inclusiveness, how do we ensure that we're managing bias and every perspective is taken and treated equally. Accountability, that we know how they're trained, we are responsible for the output of these models and these solutions. We're transparent about when an AI is being used, how it's being used, what it does, what it doesn't do. Again, fairness. How are we making sure that this is available to and fairly available to everyone? And then finally, of course, reliability and safety, which is core of how do we ensure that these models are not doing, that we're minimizing, reducing, completely controlling the potential harm of using these technologies, and ensuring that they're reliable, that and this is an interesting concept, especially with these models which are non-deterministic, and that when we give it an input, the output we might get a different output every time because they're actually non-deterministic. But fundamentally, all organizations need to adopt some form of principle and set of guidelines and governance that everyone in the organization knows about. And again, I encourage you to go to ACA-MS/RAI, and you can take this framework for yourself and use it in your own business and adjust it how you need to.
If I may ask one question on this, um, does that mean when we get the OpenAI model that is not trained responsibly?
That's a good question. It is trained responsibly, but the model is trained on public data. The
Right.
challenge with public data is it isn't it does contain bias. It isn't always accurate. The volume of data we're talking about, it isn't always correct. So we do have to wrap around the outside content safety and other guardrails to make
Mm,
sure the models do the right thing. And that's a really, really great point, because I talked about that fine tuning or that adaptation, the reinforced learning with human feedback. That's the first stage of ensuring or trying to minimize and reduce the possibility of these problems with the models. So that's the first stage. But Microsoft also adds another wrapper around everything, which is content safety.